Ah, the great obelisk of Egypt. We all know that, right? Or those tall, skinny stone things that the Egyptians put in the ground, often in pairs. And they look kind of like giant pencils or candlesticks. But what if I told you that these giant stone obelisks were actually something completely different? Hi, it's me, and this is my channel. And today, we are talking about what people get wrong about ancient Egyptian obelisks. Most people who learn about obelisks learn about them through the lens of Egyptomania, which is a real thing. In the 19th century, European obelisks were all the rage. Everybody wanted one. And so many European cities have obelisks from Egypt, or even just replicas of Egyptian obelisks, that you can find them everywhere. The British, the French, and the Italians all got into the spirit of things by erecting their own obelisks to celebrate the opening of new rail lines. The completion of public works projects are just for fun. But the Victorians weren't the first ones to use obelisks like this. The Romans had gotten into the obelisk game long before them, and they would put up obelisks to celebrate the dedication of a new temple or other important civic building. Or they might erect an obelisk to commemorate the birthday of one of their emperors. But these Roman obelisks were actually just copies of Egyptian obelisks, because the Romans thought they were so cool. The word obelisk itself comes from the Greek word for copper, because originally the obelisks were made out of copper. But the Greeks also adopted the obelisk from the Egyptians, and they used to call them Syrian columns. So when we talk about obelisks, we're really talking about a type of monument that the Egyptians invented. But everybody gets them wrong, including me, because while I was doing research for this video, I learned that most Egyptologists don't actually call them obelisks. They call them pillars, or sometimes they refer to them as the traditional type of obelisk. I don't blame them. It's kind of hard to talk about both Roman obelisks and Egyptian obelisks, when one group keeps copying the other one. So calling them traditional obelisks helps to distinguish them. But I'm not an Egyptologist, so I'm going to continue to call them obelisks. And I hope you will too. But now let's get back to those Roman obelisks. Back in the days of the Roman Empire, there was a bit of an obelisk craze going on, especially under the Flavian dynasty, which ruled from 69 to 96 AD. During that time, there was an obelisk building boom in Rome alone. But since the Romans didn't have any obelisks before the Egyptians did, they had to import them from Egypt. And they weren't messing around either. They built at least 42 obelisks in Rome during that time period. So if you go to Rome today, you can see many of the Egyptian obelisks that the Romans brought there. Some of them are standing in public squares or outside of churches. You can even see one in the courtyard of the Vatican museums. And speaking of the Vatican, that brings us to another misconception about Egyptian obelisks, which is that the Romans were the last people to ever use them. That is definitely not true. After the Roman Empire fell, people stopped making obelisks in Europe, but they continued to be popular in the Islamic world. In fact, Cairo is full of obelisks from the Arab period. One of the most famous ones is the famous one in Tahrir Square, which was erected in 974 to celebrate the completion of a mosque. Another famous one is the one at the entrance of the Alabaster Mosque, which dates back to the 14th century. And then there's the one at the entrance to the Citadel of Salaheddin, which is even older. That one dates back to 835, and it was erected to honor Caliph Al-Mu'min ibn al-Rashid, who was quite possibly the most badass caliph of all time. Okay? I've then just realized that I've spent way too much time talking about obelisks in Rome and Cairo. So let's wrap this up. My big takeaway is that obelisks are older than the Romans, and the Romans weren't the last people to use them. So if you want to learn more about Egyptian obelisks, I suggest that you come to Egypt. You can see some really well-preserved ones at Karnak and Luxor temples. You can also see a nice collection of them at the British Museum. Of course, you can take a trip to Rome to see the ones there too. Just remember, if you want to see the real deal, you have to come to Egypt. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. See you next week.